There's something quietly terrifying about waking up in the 21st century. You've got access to the entire knowledge of humanity in your pocket. You can talk to someone across the world in seconds. You're more connected than any generation before you. And yet, you feel lost, overwhelmed, anxious, behind. Why? Because your mind wasn't built for this. Let me say that again. Your mind, your ancient survival-optimized brain, was never meant to operate in this hyper-speed, hyper-stimulated, hyper-artificial reality. And the worst part is, no one told you that. There's a reason you scroll endlessly, struggle to focus, feel socially anxious, and can't sleep even when you're tired. But that reason isn't laziness. It isn't weakness. It's a mismatch between your brain's wiring and this century's design. You see, for 99.9% of human history, your environment evolved slowly. You lived in small tribes. You hunted, gathered, rested. You spent hours in silence, days without seeing more than 10 people. Information came from the stars, from nature, from face-to-face stories. Now, you wake up to flashing screens, buzzing alarms, algorithmic feeds, marketing psychology, comparison traps, fake smiles, and infinite choices. And your mind is suffocating. But the scariest part, your brain doesn't even realize it's drowning. Why? Because evolution moves in generations, not notifications. Every time you feel tired without cause, scattered without reason, anxious without logic, it's not you failing. It's your nervous system trying to survive in a world it was never calibrated for. Let's break it down. Your brain, biologically, is still a 200,000-year-old machine. It's obsessed with patterns, survival, social cohesion, and novelty, because in the past these instincts kept you alive. But today, that wiring is being hijacked. That dopamine spike when a notification pops up, that was meant to reward you for finding fruit or escaping danger. Now it gets triggered by a meme. That urge to compare yourself to others, it helped you find your place in a tribe of 150. Now you're comparing yourself to 7 billion people in 15 seconds. That fight-or-flight response, it once helped you survive a predator. Now it gets triggered by an email, a like count, a passive-aggressive comment. You weren't designed for this pace. You weren't built to process this much. You weren't meant to perform every second of your life for a digital audience. And yet, here you are, trying to survive in a world your nervous system cannot decode. So what happens when your ancient brain is forced to function in a modern machine? What's the cost? That's what we'll uncover next. But first, remember this. You are not broken. You are overloaded. Let's go deeper. You wake up, check your phone, and suddenly, you're someone else. You see a curated body, a filtered lifestyle, a perfect routine. And before your feet even hit the ground, you're already comparing. You're already losing. You're already failing a game you never agreed to play. That's not just a bad habit. That's identity erosion. What if I told you most of your personality today isn't even yours? What if it was constructed, subtly, slowly, by systems that don't care who you are, only what you click? Your brain evolved to build identity through community, storytelling, and lived experience. It once took decades of trial, error, hardship, and reflection to become who you are. Now, it takes a 3-minute video, a viral trend, a comment thread, a day in the life montage. You think you want that morning routine. You think you like that aesthetic. You think you've chosen your identity. But you didn't. You absorbed it. Scroll long enough and you stop being the viewer. You become the product. And your sense of self? It becomes a copy of a copy of a copy, a personality constructed from algorithm-approved micro-influencers and highlight reels. But if your identity is built on what's popular today, what happens when the trend dies tomorrow? You vanish with it, and that is the root of modern emptiness. In tribal times, your identity came from role and ritual. You were the builder, the hunter, the healer. You knew where you belonged. You knew who needed you. Today, you're the content consumer. You're the audience. And if you don't perform well enough online, your sense of worth evaporates. We tell people, be yourself. But the modern brain doesn't even know what that means anymore, because the self it's trying to be is fractured across 10 platforms, 100 opinions, and infinite expectations. This is the new crisis, not hunger, not war, identity confusion. People are starving for a sense of self that wasn't built by pixels and approval metrics. And here's the cruelest part. The more confused you feel, the more content you consume to try and find you again. But each scroll just adds more noise. And your brain, it drowns in borrowed thoughts. You are being subtly erased by information overload disguised as empowerment. So how do you rebuild a self that's real? How do you regain control over your own mind in a world designed to hijack it? That's what we'll uncover next. Because what they don't tell you is this. You were born with natural systems that regulate attention, presence, and peace. But modern life hijacks them. And if you don't fight back, you lose the ability to feel anything deeply. Let's go there. Let's get one thing straight. The systems you use every day, your apps, platforms, devices, aren't just tools. They're designed environments. And their goal isn't to improve your life, it's to extract your attention. Every scroll, every ping, every red dot, it's not random. It's psychological warfare. And your brain? It never stood a chance. But what if I told you, distraction isn't a symptom of modern life, it's the product? You were never meant to be this distracted. But distraction is profitable. And the deeper your mind sinks into it, the harder it becomes to come back. Your prefrontal cortex, the seat of focus, judgment, planning, is no match for trillion-dollar attention engineers. You're being pulled by dopamine loops designed to keep you on edge. Swipe, scroll, reward. Swipe, scroll, doubt. Swipe, scroll, regret. Sound familiar? It's not your lack of willpower, it's their abundance of control. Let's make this real. Ever try to focus on something important and 5 minutes later, you're in a YouTube rabbit hole? Ever refresh a page for no reason, just to check? Ever forget what you were looking for because the feed gave you something else? That's not random. That's architecture. You're not addicted to your phone. Your brain is being trained to need uncertainty. Each time you swipe, you might see something amazing, or horrifying, or hilarious. That unpredictability, variable reward, is the same mechanism used in slot machines. And you're pulling the lever hundreds of times a day. Now imagine doing that for years. What happens? You lose your ability to sit still, to do nothing, to be bored, to be present. You crave stimulation, but you can't find satisfaction. You want peace, but you can't silence the noise. You've been rewired. Let's go deeper. Ever heard of digital overstimulation? It's when your brain receives so much high-intensity input, so often, it starts to raise your mental baseline. That means silence feels uncomfortable, stillness feels like laziness, real life feels boring. So you chase more input, faster content, shorter videos, quicker rewards. And without realizing it, you've trained your brain to operate in crisis mode all the time. This is why meditation feels impossible for some people, not because they're bad at it, but because their brain has been primed for chaos. The system teaches you, be alert, be reactive, be plugged in, but your nervous system was built to rest, to breathe, to notice. You were made for slow sunsets, not flashing reels. You were made for deep conversation, not fragmented takes. You were made for stillness, and you've forgotten how to do it. So how do you reclaim your mind in a world built to break it? You start by understanding what the machine is doing to your emotions and why your brain confuses panic with purpose. Let me ask you something. When was the last time you did something that felt deeply satisfying, but didn't involve a screen? Hard to answer, isn't it? Not because you don't want meaning, but because meaning takes time, and your brain has been rewired to chase speed. This is the hidden cost of living in a century your mind wasn't built for. You stop feeling your own life. We were never meant to live in a world where everything is urgent, but nothing is important. Your biology evolved to build meaning slowly, through connection, effort, struggle, beauty. Now, meaning is reduced to metrics, views, likes, shares, followers. That's not meaning. That's performance. The modern world tells you, hustle more, post more, achieve more, stay visible. But here's the truth. You don't need more productivity. You need more purpose. Your ancestors found meaning through community roles, ceremonial rites, spiritual stories, interdependence, connection to nature. Today, most people find meaning through attention, outrage, validation, consumption, dopamine. That's not an upgrade, that's a crisis. You feel empty not because you have nothing, but because you've forgotten what enough feels like. And the more you try to fill that emptiness with digital noise, the louder it grows. We now have a generation raised by screens, where conflict means comment sections and success means constant visibility. But what happens when your mind is constantly chasing recognition in a world that only gives you scraps of it? You start to confuse feedback with fulfillment. You start to believe you're only valuable when you're seen. You're only progressing when you're busy. You're only respected when you're praised. But here's the Machiavellian twist. The more you depend on external approval, the easier you are to control. You were never supposed to ask the internet for permission to exist, but now, even your joy feels like it needs to be captured, filtered, and shared. Why? Because without that post, did it even happen? This is how meaning collapses. And worse, you don't even notice it. Because you've been taught that feeling constantly stimulated is the same as feeling truly alive. But it's not. True meaning comes not from how much you experience, but from how deeply you experience it. So, how do you escape a system that replaces fulfillment with friction? How do you slow down in a world that punishes slowness? We'll explore that next, because the final section isn't about doom. It's about reclaiming your power in a century that steals it, and learning how to build a mind that doesn't just survive this era, but thrives in spite of it. You can feel it, can't you? That something inside you is off. Like you're always one step behind. Like peace is just around the corner but never arrives. Like your brain is sprinting and your soul is gasping for air. But here's the truth they won't tell you. You don't need to upgrade your mind. You need to return to it. So what does that look like? Oh, to reclaim an ancient mind in a modern world. It doesn't mean moving to the woods. It doesn't mean rejecting technology. It means learning how to control the inputs. so you can recover the outputs. Presence, clarity, joy, depth. Because those states aren't gone, they're just buried, under noise. Let's start with the most radical rebellion, doing nothing. That's right. Sit, breathe. No phone, no goal, no performance. Just you. Watch what happens. The cravings come, the restlessness, the phantom buzzes. But then, silence. And inside that silence, your original self. Stillness isn't emptiness. It's where everything real begins to surface. Start small, 5 minutes. Then 10th. Then stretch into a walk, a journal, a conversation that isn't rushed. You'll notice something strange. Time slows down. Colors get brighter. Your own thoughts feel less like enemies because you're no longer operating in someone else's pace. You're creating your own. Reclaiming the ancient mind means doing what it was made for: deep focus, real laughter, physical movement, rest without guilt, connection without noise, curiosity without scrolling. And here's the secret. You don't need a complete detox. You need boundaries with intention. Use tools. Don't be used by them. Let the phone serve you, not rule you. Open the app, but close the loop. Because in a world where everyone is reactive, stillness becomes power. In a world chasing visibility, mystery becomes magnetism. And in a world begging for attention, presence becomes the rarest currency of all. You weren't made to sprint all day. You weren't made to be watched constantly. You weren't made to carry the weight of the world in your pocket. But you were made for this: to think slowly, to feel deeply, to live meaningfully. You think you're broken because you can't keep up, but maybe you're healthy because you refuse to. Let the world spin. Let the noise scream. Let the pressure build. But you, be still. Be intentional. Be human. Because the future doesn't need faster minds. It needs anchored ones. Men and women who remember what it means to live like we used to. Before the feed. Before the frenzy. Before the forgetting. This century isn't your enemy. But if you don't reclaim your mind, it will become your master. And that's not a future worth scrolling into.